resulted in a large spread of fake news machinery, which resulted in large-scale destruction of government materials. Now, the mainstream media took up that matter and started criticizing the religious minorities, not the religious minority actually, the organizations which represented them. Various political opposition leaders in India complained of spreading hate and they, took, they spoke about liberalism, they spoke about secularism, and they spoke about protecting the minority rights of the constitution. And then the voices that spoke criticizing the minority roles in those rights deliberately crushed. That was one example of the recent Ka Energy riots. Then I would like to speak on the recent Tablighi Jamaat case. A religious congregation took place in Delhi's Nizamuddin Markaz Mosque in early March 2020, and it was designated as a coronavirus spreading event. It was designated as a coronavirus hotspot in Delhi by the Central Health Ministry itself. Muhammad Saad, the main organizer, was absconding and is absconding till date. The Health Ministry update on April 18, 2020, of the 14,378 coronavirus infections that was reported in the country on 18th April 2020, 4,291 cases in 3 states and Union territories were linked to the event directly. So I'm speaking about data that how the Nizamuddin Markaz case was directly responsible for spreading coronavirus, and we have much evidence in the media. They had harassed the nurses. They had acted like super spreader of saliva in various hospitals. And when the mainstream media took up that issue and spoke on that, their voices were deliberately crushed by the opposition leaders and the entire ecosystem of left liberal media. And I think that was a deliberate attack on a section of Indian community's freedom of expression. I would like to give another example where our recent freedom of expression has been curtailed, is that the Ram Mandir case. Over the last 20-25 years, we have seen that the Ram Mandir case was in the Supreme Court of India, and all the proceedings were being carried on constitutionally. But most of the fanatic Muslim organizations in India try to give it a communal color and has been giving it till date. We know that now that the constitutionally it has been solved, and Chief Justice of India Ranjan Gogoi had delivered the judgment for the construction of Ram Mandir in the Ram Janmabhoomi. And it really pains us when we see that the thing which has been resolved amicably in Indian Constitution in the Supreme Court of India is being compared to Hagia Sophia of Turkey, where we have seen religious bigotry recently. Now, when the Indian when the mainstream media tries to pick up such topics and conduct debates on such for the protection of everyone's situation, most of the opposition leaders, for their political discourse, for their political benefit, try to stop their voices and accuse them of spreading hate, accuse them of spreading communal violence throughout the country. Now that we know that on 5th August, the Ram Janmabhoomi case has been organized, we are still seeing large-scale spread of hate in the name of
time is up.
Yes. So, I would like to conclude. We also have evidence of the archaeologist K.K. Muhammad, who had said that in the 2 excavations which were carried out at that site, they had found out temple remains. So, in fact, there is a grand temple structure, and below the controversial Babri Mosque, remains of temple have been found out scientifically.
Opposition is POI. Something.
Yes, so these are some recent classical examples, last 10-20 years, on how...
Your time is over now, thank you. Leader of opposition of POI.
Yes, sir. Please tell me that how far should a principal right go? That is to say that do you think that a principal right should be so important that it should overweigh all overarching consequences that accrue out of it? Like I'll give you an example to illustrate. For example, if somebody says something which incites violence, do you think just because there exists a principled right, it should be allowed?
No, but as the Constitution has given us the right to express our opinion, we can express our opinion in print media at least till it does not incite violence. And you were saying that if it even incites violence, then it will come under the prosecution of the court. The court will decide that. We individually can decide on that.
Deputy. Next speaker, Pona.
Sir, before I start, I have a clarification to seek. Like, for example, if somebody has to ask us a POI, so do we have to answer that in between our speech, or it would be in this manner, like after our speech?
I think I would allow after the speech because it becomes difficult for him also and you also and for us also because this is an online platform. So till the time I
Yes.
stop him, he has already completed his statement. To let him complete his speech and then you, if I allow POI, then I mean everyone is I think should be fine. If anyone has any suggestion, can
Yes.
give it. This is my
No, no, sir.
uh, uh,
It's
appeal to
absolutely
the
fine, sir.
okay start.
Yeah. Before I start, am I audible or is my
Yeah,
voice feeble?
if anything happens, I will tell
Okay.
you. No problem.
Please, yeah, please tell me whenever you start the timer. Whoever is timing, please tell me whenever you start it. I'm good to go.
Started the
Timer.
time.
Okay.
Uh,
Chairman, sir, at the outset, understand that what is the area this debate highlights and what is it that we are really discussing in this house today. Sure, freedom of speech is a very important right, but what is the scope and perspective this entails in it? We think that the scope of this debate is much wider than what the Prime Minister tried to set it. That is to say that this debate is not limited to legal considerations, it is also extends as far as to moral considerations and to look into whether this freedom of right really like freedom of speech really accrues good consequences in society in terms of for the minorities, etc. At that point of time, we think the Prime Minister fails to fulfill his burden. I'll come to that later. But for now, understand that what is the nature of a freedom. We believe any freedom should exist in the society, but any freedom cannot be and will never be absolute. Because at the point at which you make the freedom absolute, it also becomes absurd. I'll give you an example. For example, I have the freedom to trade wherever I want to go. But for example, I have to freedom to move wherever I want to move. But this freedom does not extend to me moving into your private spaces. For example, I can't enter into your bedroom just because I have the freedom to move anywhere I want to move. That is to say that any freedom does definitely exist, but the freedom need not be overriding over every other freedom that exists in the society. That is to say that every freedom needs to be weighed out against the counterbalances that exist in the society. At that point of time, let's understand that what is the rights of minority and what is this debate really about. Panel, understand we live in a world where minorities at every point of time are oppressed, are excommunicated. We think at that point of time, the rights of minorities become important. We think that definitely we live in a country like India where people are considerably still more friendly towards the minorities, but things like lynching still do exist. At that point of time, what happens when you allow people to speak whatever comes to their mind? Sure, I take the Prime Minister's point into consideration that incitement is a altogether different ball game. But how does incitement really function? Let's assume that in their paradigm also they don't allow like people to come and incite violence, but what they also allow in their paradigm is necessarily people coming and criticizing certain kind of religious practices, which might not be incitement per se, but might be inferred as incitement by the minority communities. Even in their best case, where somebody is speaking against the religious minorities does not incite violence, what he does definitely do is makes the minority communities feel and why is this important? And notice the most important part of the speech, the most important part of this motion, which was missed upon by the Prime Minister, was the part where he talked about minority community. when we talk about minority community, understand that the society is woven in a way where there is a relation of dominance. That is to say that the majority community does definitely in any democratic setup enjoys societal power, political power, economical power, and all kinds of power. At that point of time, necessarily every opinion that comes out of the majority becomes the more credible opinion in the society. At that point of time, the minorities do not have a proper redressal mechanism. What happens at that point of time? When you go ahead and criticize a religious tradition of the minority, since you are a person belonging to the majority community, you will get more traction out of it. You will get more media attention out of it. We think that is problematic first. Secondly, what is the problem then? We think that the problem then is this. Look, panel, we accept the premise that there are going to be academicians who are going to engage into proper, really critical analysis of religious, etc., which will create some kind of value in the society. But on a trade-off, look at the number game. We think such kind of academicians are rare and a rarity in a society. For example, you will have one such academician who is going to go ahead and do a constructive criticism, while you have 100 other people who speak everything just because they have the right to speak, things which are debilitating to a minority community, things which take away from the rights of minority, things which we think take away from the right of self-determinism of the minority, things which we think make the minority community lose their dignity. Because we think this is something which we need to protect in any democratic setup. At the end of my speech, I need to tell you this, and this is a must panel. Notice, make no mistake, we live in the country of Gandhi, where he talked about things like the rights of minority. We will not go ahead. We live in a democracy. We will not let it become a mobocracy. Your rights are important, sure, but only till they extend to your limits. Your rights cannot be important when they start reaching my nose. At that point, I must tell you that what is the burden I'm expecting from the government side till now? Whatever happened, okay. Now come and tell me why the principal right of freedom of speech is so important that it should overweigh any kind of consequences that accrue in the society. And also justify to me that how are you so sure that the society or like the judiciary at all points of time will be able to distinguish incitement from the reasonable speech? Because in a country where everybody has the right to speak everything that comes to their mind, I'm sure there are going to be some instances when somebody comes up and incites violence, but he will get away in the garb of freedom of speech. He's going to screen the freedom of the right of freedom of speech for passing on such opinion, and most probably he's never going to be caught. We think that is the problem. That is the malice we want to remove from the society. Thank you.
Yes, your time is over.
Yes. Next speaker, please. Deputy Prime Minister.
Good afternoon, panel and the adjudicators. I am the Deputy Prime Minister. I'm speaking for the motion. That is, this House believes that being allowed to critique a religious minority for their practices or stating historical facts pertaining to them is an attack on one's freedom of expression. I stand by this motion because, like, I would like to validate my point by stating that in our itself is very much confusing because we do not know who is a proper minority. In one state, a Muslim is a minority, and in some states, the Christian may be a minority. So, like, we need to have a proper guidelines to who should be actually a minority because in northeastern states, the Christian community, the majority, they use the freedom of religion to utilize their own wills. They would go on converting the tribals, they would go converting the tribes with their policies. Nobody can question them because of the this religion. We need to figure out who is the minority in our country. Then we can to should be this panel. Right now, we can every throughout the country, but minorities have upper hand over the majority because of their freedom of religion, and also we have this particular law boards for the Muslims because Muslims have this protection. They have a legal and judicial protection because of the Muslim law board, that like they are like I mean their the judgments are given through the Muslim law board. Like they are not given judgment by the like overall like law that is like considered to be like seen the population of India. They are given like judgments according to the Muslim law if they commit a crime, if inciting in some violence. So like that like scenario, we should consider like having a proper guidelines of minorities in our country. And apart from that, like during the recent cases of Palgar lynching, and also recently there was a violence in Meghalaya where like students from the minority community were abused and like they were beaten up by the like religious minority who was considered to be religious minority in our country, but they are the religious majority in Meghalaya state. So like till now like judgment hasn't been given on them. It's very slow, the judgment of minority communities, their laws. Like, and this hampers the freedom of expression of the whole majority of the other communities. Even the minorities, if you consider right now, Muslim and the Christians, they are minorities in particular states. But who are the real minorities? The real minorities are the Parsis, the Jews. Do they even like, involve in any kind of violence activities? We can do not see violence activities from the Buddhists or the Parsis, but we see violence activities
Deputy,
from.
I have a question.
Yeah.
I mean, when you say that Muslims are being protected by the Muslim board,
Yeah.
would you please elaborate or give uh, points to support this? Because there's constitution which is same, uh, the penal laws are same, the procedural laws are same, except the marriage laws, other laws remain same to them.
Like there was this I forgot the name of, sorry, I'm not a law student, so I don't know the name of the particular case where
Don't,
like
don't,
yeah, where one woman, she was married to a Muslim guy, like she was from the I mean she was from the she was a Hindu and she was married to this particular person, and like it was even though I'm talking about a like marriage issue, but actually it was a property issue, and that woman, like she didn't get the rights to her properties after the death of the husband. Like it's like this is a property issue, it's not under the minor sorry, marriage issue. So like she was denied the property right because she was not from the minority community. She was considered haram to the like family, because according to the Muslim law, she is considered haram to the family because she was not from the minority community, so they denied her the right to the property. So like that's what I wanted to conclude, that like the we should first have a solution for who is actually a minority in our country, and then we should have this discussion actually. Thank you.
Deputy Leader, Opposition.
Am I clearly audible?
Yes.
yes.
Okay. Just tell me when the time starts. I will start with it.
Okay, so before you start, I would like to request everyone to please keep themselves on mute because it creates a lot of disturbance. Okay, so I think timekeepers, are you ready?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, you may start.
Panel, let's understand what we are debating today, right? We are debating today that why criticizing a certain fact or a certain religious tradition or a historical belief of the minority is bad, right? That's what we are proving to you. The whole discussion has to be about that why passing a passing some kind of various comment about if we say namaz, or if we say for the Sikhs when they are allowed to keep a kripan with them, which is a particular fact or a particular religious practice, right? they, the burden of the proposition or the burden of the government was to come here and tell us that why criticizing such practices should be allowed, which they did not do, right? till the two speeches, only two. The only thing I got from the government, which I am going to revert at first. Firstly, they told us that there exists Article 19 in the Constitution, which allows everyone, which allows absolute freedom to everyone. Okay, we think that's not the true thing. It is to be noticed that even Article 19 is limited, and reasonable restrictions can be put over Article 19 when we look at it on a legal aspect, right? And let's understand why these reasonable restrictions should be allowed. This, when we say that passing various comments or passing any critical comment on such a religious practice like namaz or keeping a kripan with them or any such kind of a religious practice, it disturbs the public order. If a lot of people in the society use such a right to incite violence amongst people. We have to understand that when someone goes, when a person from the majority, let's say a Hindu person, goes in the public and says this namaz is a bad thing, or Sikhs are keeping a kripan with them and they can kill someone whenever they want to. Let's understand what happens. These people who are listening to this very person, they get polarized in their mind. Now they go on to think that the Muslims are doing the wrong thing, the Muslims are bad people, or the Sikhs are bad people, right? What happens then they develop a certain kind of hate towards them. The same happened in Maharashtra for years, right? In Maharashtra, the leaders should go in the public meetings and say things like all these people from UP and Bihar are just parasite. They are using our resources and giving us nothing, because of which there was violence. A lot of people from UP and Bihar who were poor migrants were killed because of that. That's what we actually regret on our side of the house. We tell you that when somebody is allowed to speak whatever they want to about religious minority, it creates a sense that all these religious minorities are bad. The majority looks at the minority with hate. Let's understand what happens in America, a similar situation. There is a racial minority who are the blacks. What happens is the majority comes and speaks openly about why the black people in America are criminals, and now they involve in criminal activities and drug dealing. What happens now? All the majority hates the black people who have a certain racial color. Yes, some of them could have been criminals, but the whole religion is identified by the same color. The same thing happened in a religious issue. Let's understand what happened. What was the cause of the hate towards Muslims or the hate towards Sikhs? Because of which they want to actually go out of the country. The Sikhs, there is a certain section of Sikhs which actually is asking for a Khalistan or a new country. There is a certain section of Muslim who in 1947 went to Pakistan. Like, let's understand what happened. Then everyone was allowed to speak anything they want about the minority. When someone is allowed to speak anything they want, that creates some kind of a hate. That creates some kind of a division. Now a Hindu person can go to a Muslim person and say anything about his religion, and if his religion is related to God, right? And whenever religion is related to God, it is related to their very soft feelings. When someone from the majority goes and talks about their God, someone from the majority goes and talks about their religion, it hurts their feelings. And I think at a point when by speaking you can hurt someone's feeling, your freedom to expression should be restricted and reasonable restriction should be put there. But not only limited to that. When you hurt their feeling, there is created a necessary division in the society. And because of the division created in the society, there is a possibility of rioting. There is a possibility of those two people fighting between each other. When the two people from a certain community are fighting, the people from their community may support them. There can be a situation where there is a group fighting between each other just because someone passed a religious comment about namaz or kripa. Right? You have to understand that this should not be allowed. The government fails to satisfy their burden, but we on the opposition are here talking about the burden of the house, and the panel should address that. Thanks a lot.
I have a question for the deputy leader of opposition.
Yes, sure.
Deputy leader of opposition, in the very beginning of the statement, he said that freedom of expression is very much limited. So, are you accepting that minority rights are above the freedom of expression of the majority?
we will accept that protection of public order or protection of the feelings of someone that it should not be hurt shall be above the right of freedom of expression. Because whenever someone express, it should not hurt someone other's feeling, or it should not lead to a fight or a riot which may disturb the public order. Thank you.
But freedom of expression is also for the minority community, but minority rights are not for the majority, right? So they have an upper hand in that way.
I think nobody has an upper hand when it comes to freedom of expression. Whenever someone he may be from a Muslim community or a Hindu community or a Sikh community, whenever he says something that disturbs the public order, or whenever he says something that can hurt someone other's feeling or the feelings of a particular community, that thing is taken into consideration. He should be thrown into jail. Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Government whip.
Am I audible?
Yes. Deputy Prime Minister, I would like to request you to please put yourself on mute. I've been texting you personally, but you are not seeing and taking it seriously.
Shall I start?
Yes, please.
A very good afternoon to everyone present here. So I strongly believe that not being allowed to critique a religious minority for their practices or stating historical fact is an astronomical attack on one's freedom of expression. So if we talk about the constitution of the country, that is the norm of nation, secularism and freedom of expression are some of the most powerful words in the constitution, and contradicting them would be an upline to the great words of constitution. An Indian constitution is above any law. So a right to critique all the other religions, when there is a right to critique all the other religions, why to leave minorities? If they have been given their rights, then we also, or we can say the majority has also has rights to critique their practices. And yes, condemning unnecessary and non-ethical practices would be definitely be held account of. We take the example of Muslims sacrificing poor animals on the name of Allah is wrong. Not even Muslims, but even Hindus or any other religion sacrificing life of an innocent animal is not acceptable. Being maimed, burned, killed in the name of religion is not history. The apparent progressive world we live in still practices some horrific, brutal ritual, which, in spite of being banned by government worldwide, see a large number of participants even today. And this thing needs to be criticized. It needs to be condemned. People, especially minorities' primary concerns were growing religious Hindu fundamentalism, their political links and strong ideological influence. We can take an example of self-flagellation, which is a religious practice in the name of God, where people hit themselves with whips and whips of chain. It is in utter absurdness. If not, people who raise a voice against such awful norms. Baby tossing is another example of weird practice of one of the religious groups, where babies are tossed from the temple roof to the ground filled with people. Just imagine how absurd does that sound only, and there are people out there who are still practicing it. Not only this, in the name of expressing gratitude, human even sacrifices their human beings. So there is a climate of fear in the country regarding freedom of expression. People are equally concerned about growing Muslim fundamentalism and responses to restrict free expression, especially the use of violence by means of fatwa and public intimidation. When we have an entire left ecosystem committed to
Government whip.
Government
think-
whip. She has some technical.
Yes, sir. I think so.
Should we wait for her, or we should start with the?
Should I call her up?
Yeah,
Yes,
please.
please.
Okay. She's having some internet issues. She'll be joining back.
Okay, no problem. Raisha, how much time was left for her?
Yes, I'm just taking the update.
Yes.
1
It's-
minute 35 seconds.
How
Sorry.
much
1 minute 35 seconds.
were left for her?
Yes, sir.
Anyone contacted her?
Yeah, I contacted her like she had joined and I told her to unmute. Like she has muted and
But we cannot see her.
सॉरी टू इंटरप्ट रायशा
Yes, sir.
ये जो डिबेट था ये खत्म हो गया क्या
सर एक्चुअली इसमें बस अभी एक बचा है ऑपोजिशन विप और जो अभी गवर्नमेंट विप था उसका 1 minute और समथिंग इज लेफ्ट बट उसका कुछ इंटरनेट प्रॉब्लम की वजह से शी गॉट डिस्कनेक्टेड
फाइन 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 सो प्लीज लेट मी नो है ना देन आई विल एक्चुअली क्या है कि मैं हम ये लाइव स्ट्रीम करते हैं ना तो फिर हम स्टॉप
Yes, sir.
करके फिर नया नया टीम जब आएगा नया डिबेट शुरू होगा तो हम फिर से एक बार है ना लाइव स्ट्रीम शुरू करेंगे तो इसके
Okay,
लिए
sir.
please
Sure.
मुझे बताते रहना मुझे
I will give you a call, sir.
या थैंक यू
Please.
Are you back?
Hello.
Yeah.
Shall I continue?
Yes, please.
Before
The timekeeper, please tell her how much time is left.
Minute 35 seconds left.
You are not audible. I'm sorry. Please repeat.
1 minute 35 seconds is left
Okay.
with her, ma'am.
Thank you very much. You can
Okay, shall I
start.
start?
Yes, please.
Okay. So there is a climate of fear in the country regarding freedom of expression. People are equally concerned about growing Muslim fundamentalism. And to deal with multicultural conflict, interfaith dialogues are vital. Not only such dialogues help establish trust and faith among various religious ethnic groups, but also bring diverse people together. So a critical analysis is necessary for the development of society that freedom of expression cannot be restricted unless in rare cases, and thus, without fair criticism of religion, a society cannot progress. So, it must be allowed to critique the religious practices of the religious minorities. Thank you.
Opposition whip.
Good afternoon. Thank you for giving me.
Yeah, you are audible. Please continue.
A critique of religious minorities for their practices and stated historical facts should not be allowed. I would start by pointing out the policies in the speeches of the Prime Minister and the Deputy Prime Minister. The starting of the Prime Minister's speech was with a reference from the Constitution that Article 19 is there present in the Constitution, which empowers each and everyone to present their expressions. But it has been rightly pointed out by the leader of opposition and deputy leader of opposition that it is not without its restrictions. It has been as heavily restricted as the rights are given there. For every sort of right which is given in the Article 19, equally powerful restriction is also given, because the essence of democracy is that your democratic rights stops when your democratic rights start to hurt another person's democracy. Also, I would like to point out the examples which were given by the Prime Minister. A very misplaced example of Tablighi Jamaat case was given by the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister have very elaborately explained how the Tablighi Jamaat is responsible for the spread of the COVID-19 in the nation. I would like to ask the Prime Minister that in the question of why the historical facts and the practices and their practices should not be talked about, how it is related to a present mistake. Are you trying to suggest that a present mistake of a particular part of some people should be ridiculed by a historical mistake, like a mistake for their grandfather should be ridiculed just because a particular section or some people have done a mistake? This is very misplaced, and this is basically the reason why it should not be allowed to ridicule minority, because if the people related to minority, like the example in Tablighi Jamaat, would do something wrong, they have definitely done something wrong in the light of a health hazard. But are you going to ridicule them because of the works and the history which their forefathers and fathers have been involved in? This is completely unreasonable. Also, the leader of opposition has pointed out that what is at the balance. If we see at the balance, if we give the right to ridicule and critique to the general public, surely there would be one scholar who would be critiquing for the purpose of dialogue and cultural ethnicity normalization, as pointed out by the government whip. But and will ridicule, and it would be used against them to ridicule the current acts or current faults which has nothing to do with their past history and their religious practices. This would give rise to malignant ridicules. This would basically give rise to the malignant ridicules, then the positive ridicule. Also, there is also one more evil which is associated with this sort of expression of freedom, is that we have seen from the speech of the leader, Deputy Prime Minister himself, that he was continuously saying that there is a protection given to minorities, that majority cannot ridicule or critique minorities, but minorities are free to ridicule and critique all other religions. This is also a myth which basically have originated from the statement of their freedom of speech about their religions and practices, and it was also extended by government whip. There is no such constitutional provision or law which allows minority to critically analyze religious practices of majorities, but majority cannot do so. It's same for both of them. And
this is the very point. When people who are not scholars and normal people who basically in today's day gain their knowledge from WhatsApp University would be allowed to present their opinions about the history and fact of a certain community, such myths would be more prevalent in the society. Also, our leader of opposition rightly pointed out that there is a majority. So if a majority would say one thing, its voice is already going to be oppressed by the voice of the minority because there is no number. If 10 people scream one thing, it is a very common a common conclusion that the voice of the 100 people would be more heard of and would become a common fact. In policies in the history because history has not always been what has actually happened. The same thing would happen. The people who belong to majority has a major role in writing the history. Therefore, history is also not skewed. Also, government have a certain responsibility
Opposition
to.
whip,
Uh,
your time is over.
okay, I would just like to end by saying that the government have a responsibility to stop the balance from skewing in one side and to prevent and to give some restrictions to the right of freedom of expression. Thank you.
Now I would like to request the respected adjudicators to kindly give their feedbacks without declaring the results.
Okay. Uh, a very good evening to both the teams, TC27 and TC06. Let me proceed by saying to both the sides uh, that all six of you were a little confused about the topic from the beginning to the end. Uh, well, I have not judged upon that entirely, or neither I'm going to cut marks for that because the topic was little bit tough and confusing. But I would go by first. I will go with TC27. I'm not going to name any specific portfolio. Uh, uh, I liked the two things in the entire 27, or rather, I say, okay, I will say that I like the Deputy Prime Minister opening statement that who is a minority. And he gave two, three examples. It was actually very interesting and appealing to listen because in your entire 5 minutes, there are only certain few lines that uh, gives you an edge from the other point, and I might think that this is a good question. His response to my question was also good, and he asked a very uh, intelligent question also to whomsoever is asked. And as far as leader of opposition is concerned, I like the point that they were more upon the law side, uh, since I being an advocate of Delhi High Court. And yes, I felt that none of you were more in time. I mean, there were times that the buzzers had to run more than twice. This I have kept in mind. Uh, and whips were both the confused part. Uh, they start in their midst, they were very confused, but then latter part or the end part, they were able to touch the topic or the side they have chosen to speak. Well, that's all from my side. I give over to Krishna Pandey.
Thank you very much. Nav. I'm partially agree with my learned friend, Mr. Shukla, what he had said. But I also appreciate the efforts of the participants during this time of pandemic, COVID-19. All are preparing so good. They are doing so well. Regarding the topic, yes, all were a little confused. Someone talking about the restrictions of freedom of speech and expression, media rights, about minorities. So in a democratic country, people has the liberty to do wrong. They have the liberty to go wrong, do wrong they want to do. Restriction cannot be put on media. Media can show any news. The recent judgment was delivered by the Bombay High Court. in Arnab Goswami case. So media has the full right, the fullest ambit of freedom of speech and expression has been given to media since the case of Indian Express till today. Rest of it overall it was very good effort. You all did a good work. Thank you.
Your mic is off.
I want to see the faces of TC06, deputy leader of opposition, deputy leader of opposition, and whip. Just for the marks. Can I have their faces? Okay, you are deputy. Okay. Leader. Okay, and whip. Whip. Just for stay for a minute.